Motivating the mind, building the body, and searching the soul. This is Grit for Life radio podcast. I'm your host, Nate Parks, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Grit for Life radio. We're continuing our series on that coincides with our Grit workshop heroes, and those who are participating actually in the workshop are learning how to become their own hero, focused on mind, body, and soul. And if you've been listening to our podcast, you may have heard me say this before, but if you haven't, I just want to get this in here. Maybe you're saying, well, I'm not part of this workshop, so I guess this podcast is not for me. And that could be the furthest thing from the truth. You can still learn something from this podcast. And what we do a lot of times is once we get done with the workshop that includes podcasts, then we go and we usually give it a little bit, and then we start including them actually on our Grit for Life Facebook group, and you can also find it on our YouTube. So if you're not familiar with Grit for Life, go check us out. You can find us at Grit for Life on Facebook, and you can find us on our YouTube channel as well as on TikTok at Grit Nation, and then Twitter, of course, Grit, the number 4, Life. And just stay up to date with us and let us be able to help you motivate your mind, build your body, and searching the soul. In the workshop, we're heading into the very last week of a 4-week workshop, and we are focusing on searching the soul and the importance of self-reflection and what do we do with self-reflection, why is it important, how do we do it, and different techniques. And, you know, when I start thinking about soul reflection or self-reflection, I think of something that Socrates is noted to have said. It says, people make themselves appear ridiculous when they attempt to know obscure things before knowing themselves. And when I read that, that has such power to it, because I don't know, maybe you can relate to this. I know individuals who have a lot of knowledge, but it seems that they are just very surface individuals. They try to gain all this different knowledge about all kinds of different, in Socrates' words, obscure things, but they don't take time out to really begin to learn themselves and begin to self-reflect. And one of the definitions that I recently came across for self-reflection, I think really is a very good definition. I think it's a very bold definition. And it just simply says, self-reflection is meditation or serious thought about one's characters, actions, and motivations. Why is it that we find it very hard to search our soul and to self-reflect? It's something that it is one of the most important things that we can do to better ourselves, to advance our own life, our own successes, to reach our dreams and to reach our goals. It is absolutely vital to spend time soul searching and self-reflecting, but it is probably the one thing that most people will avoid. When we talk about mind, body, and soul, I know people that'll go out all the time. They'll go and work out. They'll spend all this time at the gym, or they'll go run, or they'll go bike or hike or whatever. They love to stay physically fit because they love the outward appearance of what it brings. But they will not, if given the time or even challenged, most of the time they will not self-reflect. And working with people, trying to motivate them and give them some advice on their success and their future and how to build their life and to build a better version of themselves, this is the one thing that I find that seems to be a hurdle many times. And I think the reason that it is such a hurdle is because I can tell you all day, I can motivate you and give you motivation clips and YouTube videos. I can do all that. And I talked about that before, where motivational quotes or memes or pictures or videos are just that, unless action is applied to it. And I can teach you how to be healthier. But when I begin to start asking you to really start embracing self-reflection, meditation, and learning to enjoy the quiet and the silence, and being able to allow the universe to talk to you and be able to really begin to get to the bare necessities of who you are as a person. That is where I usually lose most people. And yet I would dare say this is one of the most vital things that you can absolutely do. Socrates also says, my friend, care for your psyche. Know thyself. For once we know ourselves, we may learn to care for ourselves. And I see this over and over and over talking to people. They are so depleted. They are so struggling with depression and anxiety. They're struggling with being defeated, and they're angry and they're bitter and they're worn out and they've given up, and they're just sitting around and they're complaining, and they have such a really bad attitude. And I'm not saying there's not a reason for it, but when I start to ask them to start breaking things down and first of all taking responsibility for where they are and why are they there, I usually get people not coming back. And the truth is that if we can learn the importance of self-reflection and soul searching, we are going to be able to start truly peeling back the layers, such like an onion. Peeling back the layers of who we are, where we really need to work on. What I found is people will have no problem doing a little bit of soul searching and then working on something that's really, really easy. Again, but that's just surface. That's superficial. When I tell people, you know what, you're just being superficial. Let's dig deeper. They get offended. I'm not being superficial. I'm not superficial. But the truth is they are. We don't want to. When I came to a point in my life, when I had that defining moment over several different times in my life where I had to sit there and say, okay, there's one person I have to wake up with every single day, and that is me. There's one person I have to look in the mirror at every single day. That is me. There's one person that has the authority to change the things that I do not like about my life. And it is not my boss. It is not my significant other. It is not my parents. It's not people who've done me wrong. It is me. The importance of self-reflection is that it demands us to stop and pause. Self-reflection and soul searching demands us to stop and pause. And that's something we don't like. The reason we don't like to stop and pause is because it makes us have to sit with ourselves. And many times we don't like ourselves. And we don't want to blame ourselves. We don't want to take the responsibility. And when we stop and pause and sit in silence, we have to take a look at ourselves. But that's a good thing. We need to embrace it. I see people every day that are bouncing back and forth from work and family and work and family, or maybe just work, or maybe it's the gym, or they're so go, and they're wearing themselves out and they're exhausting themselves to the point of sheer exhaustion to where they can't do anything, pursuing nothing. And then they complain about why they don't understand why nothing changes in their life. But the problem is their constant hustle is not really hustle. What it is a mask to keep them busy so they don't have to actually stop and just sit with themselves. What we do is we put ourselves on autopilot. If we don't stop and pause, we engage the autopilot and set in motion a self-destruction, basically a version of crash and burn. We sit there and we just go on autopilot and say, all right, I'm just going to go. I'm going to run. I'm going to do it. And we exhaust ourselves and I just don't have time. I don't have time to read. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to motivate, learn new things. I don't have time to go to a new training session. I don't have time to do all this. You do. If you will learn to self-reflect and start cutting out things that aren't helping you get closer to your goal. Self-reflection gives us time and space. Self-reflection allows us the opportunity for a fresh perspective. When we can take a moment out and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to set it some time with the grit workshop. We've talked about, making sure you calendar out your time to see and mark down your time. Just spend a few days doing it and seeing where you're wasting time. And if we can sit there and cut out some of the nonsense and some of that noise and learn to sit in silence, we can schedule and say, okay, I am going to take the next hour to just be. And while I'm just sitting with myself, I'm going to self-reflect. I'm going to ask myself questions. What is it that I'm not taking responsibility for, and how do I take responsibility? What is it that I'm trying to control that is not mine to control? What are some of the things in my life that I'm doing that isn't projecting me and propelling me forward toward my dreams? And how do I take control of that? When we are not in control of our response, what we do is react. And usually that's overreacting. All the time I say, my response is my responsibility. My response is my responsibility. Your response is your responsibility. And the thing is, when we take time out to begin to dig and soul search and sit with ourselves, we are now taking control of our response. We can review back over the last day or so and say, you know what? When my spouse came to me and they blew up, or when my boss came to me and gave me and told me to do this and I didn't want to do it, and my immediate reaction was negative, I became reactive. I don't even know why I was negative. I mean, I could have handled it differently. Why didn't I? Well, the reason that you didn't is because you haven't become comfortable enough with yourself to take control of your response. And so instead, you are being reactive. And I would say the majority of the time when we react as humans, we overreact. And that is where we start getting ourselves in trouble. Soul searching and self-reflection requires a few different things. A few things that is very hard sometimes when we are on autopilot, when we have allowed ourselves to just react instead of respond. It takes determination. Our minds, a lot of times the people I talk to, they have conditioned their minds to react instead of respond. And they have conditioned their minds to be busy and constantly going and not self-reflect because they don't want to take a look at themselves. And so it takes determination to change. It takes a daily commitment, not just determination, but a commitment to say, today when I get up, I am going to commit to self-reflecting and soul searching today as I do things. Doesn't mean you're going to get everything right. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect at it. What it means is you're changing. What it means is when I walk into work, and as I'm walking into work, my coffee cup, my lid falls off my coffee cup and I get coffee all over stuff. I can either start swearing and cussing and throwing stuff and just get a rotten attitude, or I can go, you know what? What are the things I can control? I can't control that I just dropped my coffee all over me. Yeah, it sucks. Absolutely sucks, and it's miserable. Now I've got to try to clean it up. Now I've got to try to figure out what if I need to go back and get some new clothes, or if I'm wearing coffee-stained clothes all day. But I can either react or respond. And as you start doing that, what it is you're self-reflecting. Now, let's say that you do that, and let's say that you're out in front of your office and you spill your coffee and you kick the coffee cup down the road. You swear, you slam your fist against the wall. You walk in, you've got a business meeting. You're sitting there fuming the whole time. You don't even know what the business meeting was about. You missed some really important stuff, which then is like a domino effect later, that you missed something else. And someone said, well, we talked about it in the meeting. Yeah, I don't even remember the stupid meeting. I spilt my coffee all over the place right before I went into the meeting. Maybe that's how you react, and you don't control your response. Soul searching and taking time out in the day to soul search will help you look back and go, wow, I could have handled that better. Yep, I set a whole catalyst of domino falls into play. All right, can't change it. Can't change the past. I can learn from the past so I can change the future. So then a month later, you're walking in and you've got that amazing lunch that you just can't wait. Your mouth is watering, and somebody swings open the door wide and knocks it out of your hand. Because you spent time soul searching, Now, instead of reacting, you can respond. Can you control that your lunch went flying? Nope, you sure can't. But can you control your response to your coworker or whoever knocked it out of your hand? Absolutely you can. And how do you know that? Because you spent time in quiet, soul searching, taking control of who you are and your response instead of acting. And that takes courage, because society says flip them off. Society says let a whole string of swear words come out. Society says be angry for the rest of the day and seek revenge because you deserve it. But really, where does that get you? It gets you hours and days of anger and bitterness and resentment. And that does not set you up for success. That does not propel you forward toward where you are wanting to go or where you would like to be. Instead, you go home, you sit, you pour yourself a stiff drink, and you fume the rest of the night. And that begins to affect your mind, which then begins to affect your body. You start having stress. You can't sleep because you're tossing and turning because you're so angry. You don't want to go to work the next day because you're going to have to see that person that knocked your meal out of your lap or ruined something for you. And you're so angry and and guess what? That person probably doesn't even realize it. But the importance is to stop and understand the power of you. Understand, okay, I know I can lose my temper. How do I begin to work on that? I know that I can worry about things and stress out about things that I don't have control over, but I will. I will worry about them and 90% of them, 90 to 99% of them does not even come true, but I worry myself to death over it. Soul searching will help you realize that. And then you can start breaking it down in small pieces. Okay, my anger, which one's the most important right now? My anger or my worry? My anger, because it really does affect a lot of other people. So let's start working on that. How can I work on controlling my anger? My response is my responsibility. And you learn this through self-reflection. You see, the thing about it is our true self is our soul. Our true self is our soul. That's another thing Socrates said. Socrates was a pretty smart guy when it came to self-reflection and soul searching. But he truly had the belief that it wasn't the things that we had or the successes that we did that made us who we are. It wasn't our self. No, our self, our true self, was our soul. And there are way too many people out there who are not willing to take that time out to learn themselves. Instead, they would rather not just fake out the world, not just live a false facade to the world, but live a false facade to them. But the thing about it is your soul will always know. You may be able to trick a spouse or a coworker or a friend. You may be able to trick social media into believing that you're someone you're not. You may be able to trick a group of people you just ran into and give them a tall tale on who you supposedly are and your successes or failures or whatever, and build your image up. But when you get home and look in the mirror, the one person that will always know that you are lying is you and your soul. And it will become a cancer that will eat at you and hold you down, because you will always be living worried and scared that someone is going to discover the true you. So why not build up a true version of you that is worth living? And how do we do this? By taking time out to search our soul and self-reflect.